Hello and welcome back to another episode of Injustice For All MMA. My name is David, and this episode is for UFC Fight Night Nicolau versus Perez. This episode is a week late. I'm at this present moment of recording, UFC 301 is already finished. I have dodged all the spoilers. I'm so late. I've been so busy that I've just been dodging spoilers. I've been so good at dodging spoilers that I haven't even looked at any MMA news. At this present moment, I'm about to go finish 301, but I had to finish Nicolau versus Perez. I've been busy. Obviously, no one cares. I'm just stating the fact that I'm busy or whatever. But let's get into the card, because what else is there to talk about? UFC Fight Night, Nicolau versus Perez. This fight card, just off the top, it's a regular fight night. Thank goodness for John Gooden. I love John Gooden. He is basically the number 2 guy in my mind. He's the number 2 guy behind Anik. We have DC on commentary with the hoarse voice, and then we have Joe Martinez, who loses his voice mid-card, and then Charly Arnolt comes in. And Charly Arnolt comes in. Am I saying her name right? Charly Arnolt. Arnolt comes in, and she does announcing for a little bit, enough for her Veneers to get in the way, and then go from what the fuck is going on. It was just a weird fight night. It's a weird fight night. But other than that, the thing that remained consistent about this fight night is how bad the judges were. And this is the whole point of the show, is me highlighting how fucking inconsistent. Think of a scenario where the world shuts down due to a virus, and you hunker down into a compound where the sound is minimal. So minimal that, one could argue that it makes scoring maybe cleaner. In this scenario, obviously for the past maybe, plus years, there's been an audience in the Apex, to the point where I'm starting to struggle. I'm failing to realize what is the point of the Apex now, because it should only really be used for Contender Series fights and tough fights and exhibition level fights. At this point, we're holding private shows for Vegas residents. That's what it seems to me. And the issue that I'm having here is, week in and week out in the Apex, we get worse judging here than I think we get in live arenas, where crowds influence certain scorecards depending on the circumstance, and certain superstar fighters can get given decisions here and there. We're getting worse scorecards in the Apex in a controlled area than I've ever seen. And this shouldn't even be the case. Let's go through it, okay? First fight of the night is Benitez versus Maheshate, okay? I had this 30-27 for Benitez. I am trying to understand where in the universe Maheshate got this decision. In no way did he win this fight. Let's start off with the first. It's fairly even on strikes, with the edge to Benitez. I'm going to argue that the strikes are close, even almost. I say even. I'm counting strikes, obviously. Even on strikes, the harder shots go to Benitez. That's where I give him the round. I put a close mark on the first round. Excuse me. I put a close mark on the first round, just to be objective, just to be fair, and say, okay, this round can possibly go to Maheshate. That's cool. All right. We go to the second round, where this isn't even a debate at this point. Benitez barely outstrikes Maheshate. You go to the third round, he outstrikes Maheshate in the third round by 13 plus strikes. If you have one definitive round, it's the third round that goes to Benitez. Clear. Second round also goes to Benitez, even though he barely outstruck Maheshate. He outstruck him enough to win this. I'll compare this round to the first round of Perez versus Nicolau, where Perez barely outstrikes Nicolau, and I think he won that round. And I'll just spoil it, I guess. All three judges scored the first round for Perez. I'm sitting here and 30-27. That's my scorecard. You can argue a 29-28 at the very least for Benitez. Nothing goes to Maheshate. We go to the judges' scorecards, okay? We go to the scorecards, where chaos just ensues. All three judges, Eric Colon, Brian Minner, Tony Weeks. I'm not even going to comment on the three judges. I think you should already, whatever. You would already know by now. All three give the first round to Maheshate. I don't like that. It's a close round. We'll give it a toss-up. Second round. Eric Colon gives the second round to Benitez. Brian Minner and Tony Weeks gives the second round to Maheshate. And then all three give the last round to Benitez. That one's clear, obviously. This is nonsense. This is a robbery, and John Gooden is so good at this that instead of making it a big deal, because I don't know what they tell in his ear, I don't know what he's conducted to do, but I just like the way I like the way he slyly mentions it, because if it were any other crew, if it's Brendan Fitzgerald, who doesn't know how to score to save his life, and Anik, who I don't like some of his scorecards, but beyond that point, they mention robberies in a way of like, well, this judge had it this way and this way, and it comes off kind of weird and kind of sultry. John Gooden is like rushing us out of the door. Like the decision will come through, and the whole commentary team will be quiet, and John will be like, "Okay, that's an interesting one." John Gooden will be like, "That's an interesting one. Okay, and congratulations to Maheshate," and he'll move on. And I like the way he does it because it gets me stewing. In my head, I'm going, John Gooden should be screaming to the heavens, Benitez just got robbed. Benitez got robbed and nobody cares. Nobody cares. That's my feeling on it. Okay, we go to the next fight. It's Petrovic versus Liang. Okay. Petrovic wins in the third round by submission. In that first round, Petrovic had a takedown with some ground and pound, but Liang had a takedown, and she outstruck Petrovic on the feet, which, pretty standard round. Second round, Petrovic understands that Liang can't grapple, or she runs out of car. I forget. She just can't. She's weird. The way she moves is weird. And Petrovic gets a takedown with ground and pound for about 3+ minutes. We go to the scorecards, and the reason why I put this in the scorecard marker is because all Mike Bell, Adelaide Bird, Chris Lee, all their scorecards look the same as mine. Here's the issue here. Adelaide Bird and Chris Lee give the second round to Petrovic a 10-8 instead of a 10-9. This is absolute horse nonsense. They're inflating the scorecards. There's no need for a 10-8 here, and I don't want to sound away here, but this is what it's going to sound like. Liang's head bobbling on the ground for a minute isn't an indication of let's give her a 10-8. There's certain fighters who move a certain way, and the judges go, oh. Like, certain fighters get hit, and their head will bop back a certain way. A good example is Malarkey. Malarkey will get hit, and his head will snap back like a fucking yo-yo. I need a better example. His head will snap back like a fucking like a Twizzler if you whip it. That sort of shit. And that's not an indication that he's 4 seconds away from being KO'd. It just shows that his neck just moves that way. We've seen many fights. A good example is the Michael Johnson fight, where his head was snapped back a couple times. I scored that fight for him. I thought he won that fight. I'll defend that. But there's this optics thing where someone's getting ground and pounded, and we'll explain in this. There's another fight here where someone gets a 10-8 due to optics for some goofy reason. Certain fighters get hit a certain way, and the judges go, "Oh, he looked weird getting hit, so let me just give you a 10-8." It's absolute nonsense. And I'm going to give an honorable mention to Adelaide Bird and Chris Lee because that's a stupid 10-8. Next honorable mention, Mann versus Souza. I had this 29-28 for Souza. Close marker on the third round. I gave first 2 rounds for Souza, last round for Mann. Close marker on the last round. You can argue that last round for Souza if you want to. I gave it to Mann. I'll explain in a second. All right. So in the first round, fairly even on the feet. Both had a takedown. But Souza had ground and pound with hers. Basically, Mann had a takedown. She didn't have ground and pound. Souza had a takedown. She had ground and pound. That won her the round. Second round, close on strikes again, but Souza had a takedown. Funny thing about this round, if this were a men's fight, this fight had a bunch of moving parts to it. Okay, if this round were a men's fight, this round might have been scored a different way. It's close on strikes in the second round. Souza gets a takedown and proceeds to just not, how do I put this? She proceeds to not strike. And the few strikes she does land there are almost non-existent. In fact, I hate to say this, but Mann was more active than she was. Mann on the bottom was more active. Granted, her strikes were just pitter-patter and they were irrelevant and nothing. But if this were, I don't know, a fight a week ago, if I remember off the top of my head, which it wasn't a week ago, I'm just bullshitting now. Hold on, I need to find it. There was a fight. Brzezinski versus Walker is a great example where Brzezinski is ridiculously active on the bottom, right? If this were that sort of fight, this gets scored differently. But for some reason, Mann gets taken down. She's not really landing anything significant from the bottom, so she's not going to get that round. And nor was I going to score it for her, but Mann looked a lot better. Okay, she looked a lot better in this fight than she did in her first fight. In her first fight, she looked so green, I was questioning the matchmaking. I'm telling you, I was like, wait a second, who set this up? They set her up to fail. In this fight, she looked actually competent. She looked good for a while. In fact, I think for all 3 rounds, she looked pretty good. The second round, I think she looked good. If I were Scott Fantana, or if I were any of those Sherdog people, I'd probably score the second round for Mann, but I didn't. But then I did in the third round, and I'll explain. In the third round, Souza outstruck Mann on the feet by about 16 strikes. There was a flurry she had, and then there's 3 minutes left on the clock, and Mann gets 2 takedowns and proceeds to land. Okay, so it's funny. There's a lot of time on the clock. She gets 2 takedowns. And she's landing ground and pound, but it's not good ground and pound. It's a lot of body. But it's for 3 rounds. It's for 3 minutes straight. And so this becomes a sort of like a sort of situation, a Lawler versus Nick Diaz 2, where which strikes are more important, the heavier strikes or the abundance of strikes. And because of the amount of time that was left, I gave the last round to Mann. I think you can argue this for Souza. The correct scorecard should probably be Souza, but because of just the fact that she landed all her strikes in like the first minute and then proceeded to just tank the rest 3 minutes, I gave it to Mann. So that's where you have 29-28 for Souza on my scorecard. You go to the judges' scorecards. All right, and all 3 judges have it. Mike Bell, Saul D'Amato, and Chris Lee, they all have it 30-27 for Souza. So there you have it. Next honorable mention is another robbery. This one really had me. My favorite thing is when the interviewer goes, "Do you think you did enough to win this fight?" Sometimes I feel like he shouldn't ask that because that's ridiculous, and sometimes I feel like they should ask that because they just got robbed. And in this scenario, Machado just got robbed. So I had it 29-28 for Machado. Last 2 rounds for Machado, first round for Mays. All right, and then in the first round, Mays outstrikes Max. So it's kind of, in the first round, it's kind of even. It's touching even, but Mays is slightly outstriking Machado. End of the round, he drops Machado. It's his round. Boom. You don't need anything to solve that round. The next rounds are interesting. Second round, Machado's outstriking Mays. He's outstriking Mays clear. A lot of missing by Mays. There's a lot of missing by both of them. But actually that's not true. A lot of missing by Mays, and a lot of blocked shots. All right, Mays is throwing a lot of shots, and a lot of them are getting blocked. But Machado outstrikes Mays in the second round. I want to say by about 5 strikes. And then in the third round, it's 100% Machado. Anything scored differently on the third round is crazy. Machado outstrikes Mays by about 15 strikes in the third round. I was watching the Mad Max commercial thinking, okay, Machado's about to get given the decision. No, not at all. We go to the judges' scorecards. Saul D'Amato, Goober, gives the first 2 rounds to Mays. First round, understandable. Gives the second round to Mays. Junichiro Kamijo does the same thing. Tony Weeks does the same thing. It's really, really, really bad. It's really fucking bad. And it's like it's unanimous is what really caught me. That's the thing that hurts me the most. When it's not even a split decision, and all 3 are in unanimity, that might be the word, unanimity of thinking that might not even be the word. All of them are thinking in line that this fight is scored away, but it's wrong. It's absolutely wrong. Machado got robbed, and I'm sitting here going, I'm lost. I'm lost for words. But honorable mention on all 3. It's absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. We go to another honorable mention. This one, here's funny. Here's the funny thing about this. I can't call this a robbery, but I want to call it a robbery. So subliminally, I think it's a robbery, but I can't due to how close this fight was. So Hubbard versus Figlak. I had this 30-27 Figlak. Close marker in the second round. I think you can argue the second round for Hubbard, but I had 30-27. First round, Hubbard had a takedown with very little ground and pound, but Figlak outstruck Hubbard on the feet. He outstruck him on the feet, but I want to say maybe like 4 to 5 strikes, but Hubbard had a takedown. Very little ground and pound, and then Figlak pretty much controlled on the feet. It's Figlak's round. Pretty standard. Second round, close on strikes with the edge to Figlak. It's close. It's like even. My counter says Figlak. It's so close that I had to put just an objective thing. So if you want to be cute about it, it's 1-1 going into the third. We go into the third. Figlak outstriking Hubbard on the feet. He outstrikes him in total. Hubbard has 2 takedowns, does nothing with them. I mean, as soon as he gets the takedowns, Figlak gets up. The takedowns are essentially null and void. Figlak is outstriking Hubbard, again, by about 4+ strikes. Hubbard does nothing with the takedowns. 0 with the takedowns. Most of this fight is on the feet. If you're going to tell me, if the strikes were even, and then we go to, and then we go straight to the takedowns, but that's not the case. This round reminds me of the Pereira versus Blachowicz fight, where essentially Pereira's up on strikes by a little bit, gets taken down, and Blachowicz does nothing. And then we have controversy for some reason. In this case, it's kind of the same thing. Instead, we just get nonsense scorecards. We get Mike Bell. He gives the first 2 rounds to Hubbard, but then gives the last round to Figlak. So I'm a little confused here. He's going to give, and here's what's really funny about this. This is why I'm having like a mental tantrum in my head. You're going to give the first round to Hubbard, given that he had 1 takedown, very little ground and pound, and he gets outstruck primarily in this entire round. But in the third round, the same thing happens, except for no ground and pound, and Hubbard has 2 takedowns. He has more takedowns here, and it's the same amount of strikes that he's outstruck by in the first. I'm very lost at the rationale here. Very lost. All 3 judges scored the same way. Mike Bell, Eric Colon, and Brian Minner. Not honorable mention all 3. I can't say honorable mention, but subliminally honorable mention, but I can't call it a robbery because it's dead on close. The strikes are too close. Hubbard gets a takedown. He does nothing with the takedown, so this all becomes like a weird subjective semantical game. Whatever. We go to the next honorable mention, and it's Yahya versus Henry. Henry gets the TKO in the third round. Score the first round for Yahya, 10-9. Second round for Henry, 10-9 as well. We go to the first round where it's close on the feet. All right, it's close on the feet with the edge to Yahya. So Yahya is kind of outstriking Henry throughout the round, but the strikes start to close in a little bit, but he's outstriking him towards the end. Also, Yahya has a takedown, 100% Yahya's round. Go to the second round. Henry drops and outstrikes Yahya and has some ground and pound. And from there, it's victory from there on out. You go to the judges' scorecards, and it's all over the place. It's all over the place. Saul Diamona has a 10-8 for Henry in the second. Now, this is another optics thing. Yes, it's a lot of ground and pound, but I don't think this is a 10-8. I think it's just inflated. It's another inflation of the 10-8. I can't fully complain about this one, given the nature of the fight, but I don't like the 10-8. Same for Junichiro Kamijo. He does a 10-8 in the second for Henry as well. Funny thing enough, he gives the first round for Henry also. He gives up 10-9 to Henry in the first. Ridiculous. Honorable mention to Junichiro Kamijo. It's absolutely stupid. And then Chris Lee, his scorecard reflects mine. You go to the next honorable mention, and more 10-8s. More goofy 10-8s. It's Lane versus Diniz. I had a 10-9 for Lane in the first round. Fight ends in the second round. KO win for Diniz. In that first round, Lane had a takedown with ground and pound for 3 minutes. Now here's the reason why this is a bad 10-8. This is my reason for the bad 10-8. So, starts off on the feet. Fairly even on the feet for a little bit. I can't really remember. Maybe Diniz is up on strikes slightly, or Lane is up on strikes slightly. Either way, it's even. It's really even. No one's supremely outstriking anyone. Lane gets a takedown, and it stays that way. He gets a takedown. For the next 2 minutes of this 3 minutes of ground and pound, it's occasional ground and pound. It's not a lot. And then in the last 30 seconds, he gets him out. I'm just relaying fights. In the last 30 seconds, he gets in a mount, and he lays off a bunch of ground and pound. This is not a 10-8. This reminds me of fucking Dumont versus the old lady. I can't even remember her name at this point. Dumont versus that old lady where she's on top of her. She just Dumont, the most inactive person ever, lays on top of her and doesn't land anything until the bell's about to ring and then goes off into a flurry. And I'm thinking to myself, how the fuck is this a 10-8? Someone explain to me how this is a 10. But whatever. That's beyond the point. 10-9 in the first for that round. Go to the judges' scorecards. Junichiro Kamijo is just feeling so happy today, and he just wants to give out 10-8s. He gives a 10-8 in the first for Lane. The rest of the judges are smart. Chris Lee, Tony Weeks, sure, gives a 10-9 in the first round for Lane. Boom. All right, and it's that simple. All right, we go to the next honorable mention. And that's De Silva versus Silva. De Silva, formerly known as Ariane Lipski, is now Ariane De Silva. Either way, she's still very pretty. Okay. Same name, same person. Different name, same person. So, De Silva versus Silva. I had this 29-28 Silva. A part of me in my soul thought Silva was going to get robbed. I don't know why. Listen, when you watch enough of these, you just feel it in your heart. All right. De Silva was given a victory versus Gatto. Gatto beat her. And for some reason, Lipski was given the victory because why not? Because the Apex just has magical powers of giving out decisions when they shouldn't be given out. Anyways, 29-28 for Silva. first two rounds, 10-9 I gave to Silva, and then the last round I gave a 10-9 to Da Silva. In the very first round's kind of eeky. I was confident the right person won the first round, but it's eeky when you watch it. Because, like DC mentioned 3 times, I don't like the way DC explains fights, because he explains them he explains them so simple that it comes off as though the fighter he thinks won for that reason. A good example is this first round, where he basically says Silva controlled the first half and Da Silva controlled the second half, which is untrue, which is 1,000% untrue. I'll read it off in a second. It's even on the feet. So off the top, when they're on the feet, it's even on strikes, relatively speaking. Silva gets a takedown and lands some ground and pound. Pretty effective ground and pound, but it's small. It's some ground and pound, right? When she gets off of Da Silva, she lands a couple leg strikes. Oh, not even a couple, a lot of leg strikes. All right. And when she does get taken down by Da Silva, she's active as well. In fact, she's more active than Da Silva is on top of her. Da Silva then gets up and lands some leg kicks too of her own, but they're not a lot either. In fact, they're probably close to the same amount that Silva had. Pretty simple. But the way DC explained it made it sound as though, because Da Silva got the takedown in the second half, that made her win. In fact, she got that takedown like a minute left in that round. Just my brain is just melting. But that's my point. Second round, Silva had 2 takedowns with ground and pound, and then the third round, Silva had 2 takedowns. But she did funny. She's getting outstruck the entire round. Silva's getting outstruck the entire round by Da Silva. Looks like she's running out of cardio, but she doesn't eventually. She's getting outstruck. She got outstruck by like 17 plus strikes. And then again, DC comes in with, this takedown by Silva isn't a good look. Or he then suggests that Silva's winning because she got a takedown at the end. And I'm sitting there going, what is he watching? Silva is getting outstruck heavy by Da Silva. And he's telling me that that Silva's winning? No. She lost this round 1,000%. She got outstruck by like 17 plus strikes. She got her 2 takedowns and proceeded to do nothing. I mean, she held. She literally got the takedown and both takedowns and held Da Silva till the round ended. Boom. That's where you get 29-28. Simple scorecard. We go to the judges' scorecards. And I'm assuming someone made a goof here. Mike Bell, at a 29-28, scorecard reflects mine. Saul D'Amato, 29-28, scorecard reflects mine. Adelaide Bird with the shitty scorecard of giving of closing her eyes for the first 4 minutes of the fight. She closes her eyes for the first 4 minutes of the fight and opens it and then sees this is funny. And then sees Da Silva being taken down. And still Silva not hitting her, while Da Silva is striking Silva. I know it's a lot of Silvas, but you get the gist of, even if she were to, it ridiculous. All those strikes in the first 4 minutes of this fight are irrelevant. Nobody gives a fuck. I'm thinking to myself, when I heard 30-27, I wanted to crash out. I wanted to punch my computer screen. Cool. Congratulations. Happy days, I guess. Happy days, and that's pretty much it. Next fight, there's no honorable mentions here, but next fight, it's Spann versus Guskov. Spann loses. Spann has no chin. He also has no. He has no chin is not the right word actually. Spann has no cardio. All right. It was proven versus Anthony Smith, where Anthony Smith was literally beat up in the second round. And then in the third round proceeded to outstrike Spann, while Spann is the only one going forward. Spann was so tired that he didn't throw strikes, but he was able to walk forward. That's one of the greatest fights ever. That's one of the coolest fights ever. It's still one of the coolest fights ever because people somehow, there's like a small contingency of people who think Spann got robbed in that fight, but they weren't watching. Their eyes were closed. They had sunglasses on while watching the fight. They saw feet moving forward, and the guy who was getting pressured, who was beat up from the second round, is landing strikes on the dude, and then they're like, hey, why didn't the guy going forward landing little to no strikes? Huffing and puffing. Why did he lose? I don't know. Why did the guy gas out in the first round of this Guskov fight? Gas out. And essentially lose the, I mean, I can't, I don't know what to say. I don't know. Whatever. Guskov wins in the second round by TKO. And then Nicolau versus Perez. I thought Perez's career was over. This is like a 3-fight losing streak. Comes in. Nicolau got knocked out in his last fight. Gets knocked out in this one in the second round. That's it. Happy days. That's all I got. Thank you all for listening. And God bless.